Problem 26. In Mr. Jordan's class, 3/5 of the students have passing grades, A, B, or C. 1/9 of the passing students have an A. What fraction of Mr. Jordan's students have an A? Key sentence here. 1/9 of the passing students have an A. That's our key sentence. We don't know how many passing students there are, but we do know that there are 3/5. It's 3/5 of his students. So it's asking what fraction has an A. Key here, the word of. Of means multiply. So 1/9 of the passing students means it's 1/9 times the fraction of the class that has passing grades. It's going to be 1/9 times 3/5. You can reduce before you multiply. 3 and 9 can both be divided by 3, so you get a 1 and a 3. You end up with 1/15. What's that mean then? It's a word problem. Make sense of it. It is 1/15 of his students would have an A. Okay, that is the answer, 1/15. Number 27. You have this expression, 3/5 divided by 1/4. Which situation matches this? The key to this one, understand what dividing means. You've been doing dividing for a long time. There are two ways to think of dividing. 8 divided by 2. You could think of it as if you split 8 into 2 groups, how many would there be in each group? Okay? That's not easy to think of here, because what would be dividing it into 1/4 of a group? That doesn't make too much sense. But the other way to think about it dividing is how many 2's are there in 8? That would come out to be 4. So you could be thinking of it that way, and that makes a little bit more sense, or a lot more sense here. How many 1/4 are there in 3/5? Okay, then look at each possibility. An athlete runs 3/5 of a kilometer in 4 minutes. At this rate, how far would the athlete run in 1 minute? Well, if that's in 4 minutes, you would take this 3/5 and divide it by 4 to figure out how much they would run in 1 minute. So that is not dividing by 1/4. That's going to be dividing by 4. Okay. Teacher fills an empty pitcher with 3/5 of gallon of water, and a blue pitcher with 1/4 of a gallon of water. How many more gallons of water are now in the white pitcher than in the blue? How many more? That would be subtraction. So that is not going to be dividing by 1/4. Letter C. Mr. Smith has 3/5 of pounds of beans. He uses 1/4 a pound of beans each week. At this rate, how many weeks will his beans last? That would be asking you, if he's using that each week, that would be asking you how many 1/4 would he be able to get out of this. That would be the number of 1/4 of pounds that he would be able to get out of this would be the same as the number of weeks. So this is 3/5 divided by 1/4. That is the correct answer. But just to check, letter D, a worker cuts pieces of strings that are 3/5 yards in length. How many pieces of string can the worker cut from a piece of 1/4? same numbers, but the situation is reversed. It's asking you how many 3/5 are there in 1/4. So this would be 1/4 divided by 3/5. So again, that is an incorrect answer. Correct answer then for number 27 is C. Number 28. Long distance running race that lasted 2 hours. Arim ran 1 2/3 miles. Allison ran 8 1/3 miles. How many times further? How many times further did Allison run than Arim? Okay, if it was how much further, well then that would be just subtraction, taking 1 2/3 away from 8 1/3. But this is just like we were talking about. How many 1 2/3 are there in 8 1/3? What would you have to multiply this by to come up with 8 1/3? So it is a division problem. 8 1/3 divided by 1 2/3. To divide, we're going to have to multiply, and to multiply, we need just a numerator and a denominator. So let's make these into fractions greater than 1. So 3 times 8 is 24, plus 1, this is 25/3, divided by 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2, 5/3. Make them into fractions greater than 1. And then you don't really divide fractions, you multiply by the reciprocal. So 25 over 3, you leave the first fraction alone, change it to multiplying, then you make the reciprocal of the one you're dividing by. So 5/3 becomes 3/5. Reduce before you multiply. Wonderful skill, wonderful tool. 3 and 3 can both be divided by 3. You'd get a 1 and a 1. 5 and 25 can both be divided by 5. So 5 becomes a 1, 25 becomes a 5. Multiply, you get 5 in the numerator. 1 times 1, you get 1 in the denominator. That is 5. Again, make sense of your answer. How many times further did Allison run? You would say Allison ran 5 times further, or 5 times the distance that Arim ran. Something like that. So the answer is 5 times. A sentence answer would be something like that. Number 29. Yesterday the temperature at noon was 20 6/10 degrees Fahrenheit. By midnight the temperature had decreased 34 42/100 degrees Fahrenheit. What was the temperature at midnight? Okay, that's a decrease. The temperature's going down. That's subtraction. You'll be taking that amount away. It's going to, you'd be starting at 20 6/10 and subtracting 34 42/10. I hope you guys can see that you're going to be going past 0. You're going to end up in the negatives. And again, just thinking of integers, these are different signs. This is positive, this is negative. The minus sign belongs to this. You need to subtract. Your answer is going to come out negative. So think of that first, because now to do the math, put the bigger number on top. So 34 42/100 goes on top. You need to take away the other number. Even though it doesn't have the minus sign, it goes on the bottom. Fill in with a 0, and now you can subtract. 0 from 2 is 2. 6 from 4 you can't do, so you need to borrow from the 4 in the ones column. It becomes a 3. That makes this column 14. Now 6 from 14 you can do. That will give you an 8. Your decimal point comes straight down and stays in a row. Nothing from 3 is 3, and 2 from 3 is 1. So your answer is negative 13 and 82 hundredths. And again, it's a word problem, so let's label your answer negative 13 and 82 hundredths degrees Fahrenheit. That would have been the temperature at midnight. If you wanted to give a sentence, it would be the temperature at midnight was negative 13 and 82 hundredths degrees Fahrenheit. All right. Okay, two more problems here. Okay, Mr. Jordan's yard is very large. His yard is 4.5 acres to be exact. He was tired, so he was able to mow only half of his yard. What is the number of acres that he mowed? Right there is our key phrase. He mowed half of his yard. That is 1/2 of his yard, which is 4.5 acres. And of means multiply. So this is 1/2 times 4.5. Let's make it into an improper fraction. 2 times 4 is 8 plus 1. It's 9 halves. Nothing to reduce, so you multiply. You get 9 over 2 times 2 is 4. Change it into a mixed number because it's a word problem. I need it changed back into a mixed number. 4 times 9, 4 would go into 9 2 whole times. You'd have one piece left over, 2 1/4 acres. So on that first day, he would have mowed 2 1/4 acres. Okay, problem 31. This amount in a parentheses plus a has to equal 0. Well, first thing to do, let's figure out what this amount is. So in order to add fractions, we need a common denominator. So we'll change those to tenths. We'll multiply this by 2. So this is negative. I'm going to put the minus sign up high. Negative 4/10 plus, you'll multiply this times 5. So you multiply the top times 5. 25/10, and that becomes negative 4 plus 25 all over 10. Put it over one denominator, and that is going to be 21/10 plus a equals 0. Can add that all the way back up. Now the thing here is we're adding something to a to get 0. We haven't talked about solving equations yet, so let's just reason this out. You've got two things being added together that equals 0. Well, if the first number was 7, the second number would have to be its opposite, negative 7. If the first number was 258, the second number would have to be a negative 258 to equal 0. So in this case, our first number is 21/10. To get 0, a is going to have to be negative 21/10. Or, I would leave it as that, but really as a mixed number, it would be negative 2 1/10. I think the most appropriate answer would be the first one, but either would be acceptable.